Good evening, folks. Jason Spohr here with Templar Strategic Solutions, Talks with Templar podcast. And, tonight we're going to delve back into some of the businesses that benefit from private security. Of course, we've discussed this topic before a little bit. And tonight I want to go back into it a bit more. I really want to focus tonight on commercial construction site security. And part of what brings that up is I was going back over old shift logs and reports spanning from August of 2023 on into about November of this past year, 2024. The contract was originally projected to be approximately 30 to 90 days for Templar, and that contract turned into 15 months with not only our security team on every night of the week, 12-hour minimum, but also for a few months we were fortunate enough to bring in our site services team to assist with the construction cleanup and dust control as they began finishing each section of the building and closing it off from the rest of the active work. Now, I'm going to be honest with you guys, we could not have been happier with being a part of such a large project, and that project, of course, was the new Kanawha County Elementary School located in the Clendenin community over in Kanawha County, about an hour or so from our offices. Again, wonderful group of subcontractors and general contractors. I can never say enough about the support we received from both the county employee who was on site, their clerk of works, Mr. Kenny Starcher, and of course then the great support we received from the Wolf Creek contractors from Ohio, and just the camaraderie that we experienced both on the security side and the appreciation they always express to us, but also, of course, the wonderful way that both Wolf Creek's employees and the general subcontractors that were on site, regardless of their trade, when our site services team moved in to start making life a little easier for them, handling the clean out and dust control for them. These guys, they were awesome. They really were. And, the thing is, again, we have to discuss, or I want to discuss, I should say, because so many of the various folks in the community that we encountered couldn't quite understand why it was that something as, to them, basic as a school construction site would have security on the hill when the contractors were absent. Well, the thing is, we're going to go over that with you, and I'm going to help you understand a little bit more regarding the benefits, or hopefully help you understand a little more about the benefits of having contract security, especially those that work with us here at Templar Strategic Solutions. And I'm sorry, I am going to be a little scattered with my speech tonight, guys. I have been battling a migraine for a couple of days, and it has about worn me to the bone. But, commercial construction sites, guys, they are high-value targets for theft, vandalism, and unauthorized access or trespass. Now, the unfortunate part with the school that we worked down in Clendenin, while they were still under construction, when it comes to the unauthorized access, it was well-meaning and normally simply curious members of the community who would bypass the security gate at the base of the entry road. And I'm not talking it was right there at the site. I mean, it was a good 3/4 of a mile down the hill before you even got to the site. And folks would push the barrier fence over out of their way. If by some chance we had the gates unlocked on a weekend or of an evening to allow various vendors to come in that needed to be there to provide basic services like the dumpster haul out, things like that. Folks would come up onto the hill, and then they would get offended because, of course, security would stop them and turn them around. And most times if they came up, we in fact escorted them back off of the facility. One of the triggering points for that, of course, was when security would come on site or our shift would begin of an evening. We would arrive just prior to the construction crews knocking off for the day, and we would wait until the last man was off facility. We would check the facility and the site to ensure that everyone was off property, and then we would go down. We would escort normally the last vehicle out, and we would secure the gate. There, of course, were a few moments or a few instances where, because of one interaction or another, or the completion of startup duties for the security detail for the night, that gate would be left open for maybe 5 to 10 minutes after the last person would leave. And there were folks in the community that would actually watch and wait to see the trucks leaving before they would try to come up and explore the construction site. Well, the reality is if you are intentionally waiting for the contractors to leave, that to us gives us reason to believe you may be up there. While obviously we try to give benefit of doubt and say, hey, they're just curious. They're here to check things out. This is a big to-do for their community. We're talking, I believe, a close to $60 million project at the end of the day. And may even been a little bit more. I can't recall the exact numbers for their project. But unfortunately, folks, it came down that even though we tried to give everybody benefit of the doubt, the first thing we think of when you're waiting for everybody to be leaving and you're coming in on things like ATVs and side-by-sides, or you're coming up and the first thing you do is try to drive around to the back of the construction site, well, obviously, our first question is, why are you here? What are you doing here? Who are you? What's your purpose? And there were a couple instances in the very beginning that I will admit that it came very close to violence. And I don't mean that lightly. I mean, I had one individual, we'd been on the site maybe a month, if that long, and I had a gentleman and a passenger come up the access road on a side-by-side. I tripped my emergency lights on my vehicle, activated my flashers, and believe me, guys, my vehicle lights up like a Christmas tree. And they started to try to go right on around me and go past me. I stepped out. I asked them to stop. The operator of the side-by-side decided he wanted to play a game of chicken. His game of chicken almost resulted in a 127 grain hollow point going through the front of his side-by-side. Because it was not a matter of it looked like he was playing chicken. I'm not there to ask him if he's playing chicken. It looked to me like he was on a side-by-side. I listened to the engine, and he was applying some fairly steady pressure to the throttle. He had one of two intentions. He either wanted to see if he could make me step away, or he intended to hit me. I wasn't going to do either one of those. I wasn't going to jump out of his way, and I had absolutely zero intention, especially after noticing a hunting rifle hanging in a rack on the back of the roll cage on that UTV or side-by-side. I had zero intention of wasting any more time trying to determine whether or not they were trying to play a game or if they intended to make poor life choices. I had every intention of stopping them. And the reason behind that, again, is, common sense says if you have a motorized vehicle of any type bearing down on you at a high rate of speed after you've instructed them to stop, there's a pretty good chance they either mean to run your gate or they mean to hit you. I made decisions. They made decisions. We were able to resolve it without violence, and they got escorted off my hill and told if they came back onto my job site, they would be arrested for criminal trespass. And if I caught them back on the property, even during business hours, they would again be trespassed and they would face criminal charges. That's just simply how we operate. When you are dealing with a facility of that magnitude, you just don't play games. And yes, when we first started the contract, due to certain safety risks, such as an active pack of coyotes roaming the hill at night, hunting, we in fact did, because it was myself and 2 other personnel working the site in the beginning, one of whom is a sworn law enforcement officer that works with us quite a bit. The overnight crew were in fact armed. Now, the reality comes, guys, commercial construction sites are high-value targets for theft. They're high-value targets for vandalism, and let's not forget the cost of the machinery and the tools and other equipment. Everything on that job site is expensive. And nobody is foolish enough not to realize that a mini track or a skid steer or a lull or a cherry picker, of course those heavy tractors are expensive. Then you have to look at the backhoes, the dump trucks that we had on the site. You're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of just heavy equipment. And of course then you have the construction materials, you have active ongoing operations, and there were times on the job site when very large parcels or pieces of steel, when they were hanging the rest of the roof and installing awnings on a couple of the areas, they would leave, while properly secured and tied off, they would leave these heavy items suspended or hung. And of course, I can't be letting people wander onto that job site, especially without their PPE, and risk them going underneath of one of those girders that was in the air, or the possibility that something hadn't been properly secured during installation yet, and risk one of those things coming down on someone and killing them. But people didn't want to hear that. They wanted to treat the construction site like it was a tourist event. And of course, there's the fire suppression system and other plumbing throughout this fairly large facility that was made of heavy wall 2 and 4-inch copper line. Now, we're not talking little scrap copper, guys. We're talking 15, 20-foot sticks between each union. That's a lot of weight, and I'm sure that most of you, especially our folks here in the mountains, understand how much of a temptation that can be to someone who, for whatever reason, pursues scrap metal values and things like that. Copper is usually very expensive, and when you're talking nice heavyweight copper pipe and tubing, that especially goes for higher rates, especially clean copper. And these kind of sites, they require vigilant protection. And with Templar, we provide that top-tier security service. We ensure the safety and security of those construction projects. And, let's just get into some of the things that we do, some of the points of value for commercial construction security. Again, obviously we are, we're talking about the crime prevention and deterrence aspect. Obviously, again, I reiterate, construction sites are prime targets for theft and vandalism, which, that leads to significant financial losses, project delays, things like that, not to mention just the added stress and frustration that that puts on everyone. You know, when there are project delays because some less than intelligent individual decides to come in and steal 3, 4, 5 truckloads of materials, and yes, I've seen them do it before, people. You know, some of these processes, when they come in to steal from a construction site, are very well organized, believe it or not. Even the ones that you would not think them to be that organized, I'm telling you, when it comes to folks, especially those who are trapped within addiction at the moment, they'll do a lot, and they'll do it fast, just to make the money to come back and satisfy those addictions. You know, but with us, our security personnel, they provide a very visible presence, deterring those criminals from targeting these construction sites. Our regular patrols and surveillance, they help prevent that unauthorized access. They help mitigate the risks before an incident occurs. You know, and again, you know, let's touch back on this visible deterrence aspect. You know, a professional security presence genuinely does, and it's proven time and time and time again, to reduce the rate of crime. Clearly marked security personnel and patrol units or utility vehicles, you know, it's a clear and very pointed signal to the world at large that, you know, your site is being monitored. Now, of course, then there's the proactive threat identification. Our routine patrols, when we're constantly moving around the site, you know, we're always present. We're always popping up out of nowhere, so to speak. You know, you may see us on the north side of a building 1 minute, and 3 minutes later, we're over here on the west side, south side. We're out in a parking area, or we're over on a material yard, and we're constantly moving around. That obviously helps us identify suspicious activities, because if I was just here on the north side 10 minutes ago or 30 minutes ago, and this job box, or what they call a gang box, which is a large toolbox for those of you that don't understand construction equipment or tools, you know, now all of a sudden these gang boxes that were closed off, one of them standing open. It wasn't open a while ago. Obviously, that is now suspicious. Or we had at the Kanawha Elementary School, a lot of the interior lighting was motion activated. And, you know, when I go by the front of a building to start a parking area patrol and to go down and check my main security gates, and I come back and those motion lights are now active that were not active when I left, that is an automatic signal to me that I need to step inside that building and I need to check every single room, every bit of roof access, every utility closet, even the restrooms, guys. You know, when you have a situation that triggers something like that, you obviously move forward and you do a thorough sweep. Of course, with Templar, one of the first things we always do is, before we step into a situation like that to inspect a building, we either call the local community dispatch or county dispatch for law enforcement, or we log into our own dispatch app and we communicate back with our home office and support teams so that they know that the officer in question will be engaging the building and entering this facility. And from there, we keep a steady time record. If the officer does not respond within a certain amount of time, we start doing follow-out calls. And follow-out calls, of course, guys, those mean that we confirm the well-being of our officer. We do a safety check, a wellness check. And if they don't respond within a set amount of time, we call the county dispatch for wherever they happen to be stationed, and we then proceed to have the county dispatch, the emergency services dispatch, send an officer to that physical location if we do not have other team members immediately in the area that can respond in a more quick manner or faster manner. Again, guys, I know my verbiage is stuttering a little bit. I know I am repeating a few things here and there, and I apologize again. This migraine is beating the snot out of me. Now, of course, as I just pointed out, our security personnel, communicate with the local law enforcement and emergency responders as needed to ensure that that site is properly secured and protected. Now, then of course comes in, let's talk about the protection of assets and equipment, heavy machinery, tools, building materials. These are all essential to a construction project. Theft or damage of these assets can be exceptionally costly. They obviously will delay the progress. Again, with Templar Strategic, we offer 24/7 coverage, and we ensure that that equipment and those materials remain protected from potential threats. I've gone so far more than once on just the Clendenin job to access the roof because contractors with the roofing company may have forgotten or been in a hurry to get out, and they've left roof accesses open, and we had to intervene and get those roof accesses closed down because we had rain pouring into the building and we had drywall getting ready to be hung in those areas. Obviously, we didn't want the building damaged or the insulation damaged. So, of course, naturally, we jumped up there. We went ahead and closed it down. But I have been on that site and came in when the construction crews might have left early. And they rarely left a coverage gap between our shift starting and their day ending of more than maybe 30 minutes. Before the last person was officially off-site that represented the county or the contractor or the subcontractors. But I have come onto the site a handful of times where I would pull up and I would find someone either trying to go through the construction dumpster to see what scrap materials may have already been disposed of. I've come on the site and found one gentleman, the electrician crew had failed to secure their Connex at the end of the day, and here this gentleman was walking out of the end of that Connex as I pulled up with about $300, $400 worth of brand new coils of electrical wire headed to his little beat out, ragged out car. And what had occurred there is, much like with the Connex, whomever had closed the access gate at the end of the roadway evidently missed getting the safety chain secured on the gate. Obviously a massive inconvenience for us kids, because then when I find a gate that is not secured and I'm coming onto the site, I start raising an eyebrow. Now, that close to the normal and routine end of the contractor's day, I didn't really think a lot of it. When I saw the gate open, I simply started on up the hill, and by then I had worked there long enough that I knew all of the vehicles that the contractors and subcontractors were operating on the regular, and this vehicle did not belong any more than the man in the moon. I made the gentleman stop. I moved my vehicle into a position where he couldn't have exited the property with his vehicle to begin with, because He had the end of a Connex in front of him, and he had my vehicle broadside behind him. He wasn't going anywhere, kids, unless he went through my car or through the side of a Connex. And believe me, his little Geo Metro-sized Tinker Toy was not going to move that Connex. But first thing I did was contact the electrician. I asked the electrician if the electrician knew the vehicle or knew the man. They confirmed they didn't. Next point, I called my point of contact with the contracting crew assigned to that property, the general contractor, which I contacted our superintendent at the time for the site, and confirmed with him that no one was supposed to be on the site at that time and that no one should have access to the electrician's Connex or be removing any of the materials on that job site, regardless of their excuse or reason, even if they were from the same company, because those materials had already been invoiced to the client, which of course was Kanawha County Schools. And didn't take us long to put a stop to it. Didn't take us long to have the gentleman removed from the property. I did follow the instruction of my point of contact, and the option we gave the gentleman was, we search the vehicle, we don't find anything else that belonged to the contractor or the subcontractor. They would be allowed to leave, but if they had put so much as a box of screws in their vehicle, they were to be held and charged with larceny and criminal trespass. They lucked out. I didn't find anything. I did, however, make them tote all of those coils of electrical wire back into that trailer and put them back where they belonged, or that Connex. And then I essentially gave them the walk of shame, and I followed their vehicle out of the property through my security gate and all the way back down to the main roadway. Kept my lights on the whole time to draw attention so everyone saw them getting pushed off the property. And then I proceeded back to my main security gate. I locked my gate down and I began my shift with filling out an incident report. Now, of course, like I say, then, you've got the unauthorized use, of this equipment. And unauthorized use of the equipment means Johnny Joe, that lives next door over here, he knows one of the subcontractors, and the subcontractor tells him, oh, sure, man, just wait till the guys are gone, and you go ahead and slide over there and grab that Mini if you need it, and just get your little bit of work done and make sure you put it back where you found it. Well, thing is liability. This guy takes the mini hoe off the site or cuts across the woods there to his property next door, and he damages this unit, which a vast majority, guys, of these units are rented through various companies like Sunbelt. And of course, the general contractor is the one that signs these leases. Who's liable if that machine gets torn up and we can't prove that it was taken off the property? That falls directly on the shoulders of the general contractor to have to pay for the damages. Then, of course, there's the worst possible scenario where this unauthorized operator doesn't damage the machine or damage something on the construction site, but instead he gets in a situation where this machine turns over on him, whether it be he pulls too close to a ditch line or a trench, or he overloads the boom, and the next thing you know, this man is crippled for life or worse, killed. So, obviously, part of our job is keeping people that have no business operating certain equipment or operating certain tools. We don't allow it to happen. We intervene, we put a stop to it, we send them on their merry way. whether it be out the gate of their own volition or in the back of a police car or an ambulance. And yes, I don't mean to say in an ambulance suggesting that Templar would intentionally harm anyone, but again, these folks could show up and they're strung out on dope trying to steal something. And of course, if they're strung out and acting like they're out of it, we call the police and we call an ambulance to them to make sure they're okay. They could go to step out of the cab of one of those minis or some other piece of equipment and slip and fall, hit their head, blow a knee, any number of things. And then you get into the monitoring of some of these high value items in the storage areas or the drop yards or the lay down yards. Again, we do that because sadly people are sometimes unscrupulous, and 99%, I would say, of construction site theft itself, or at least about 90%, are crimes of opportunity. Thief comes in, thief finds unsecured gate or a weak spot in the safety fences or some other way to access the site, the construction site or the job site. They're there now. They know how to get onto the property, so now they're looking at all these rather expensive tools and heavy equipment and construction materials. Guys, the thief just can't help themselves. They're going to steal it if they can. And of course, we have to deter any type of vandalism that comes on the site. We can't have people out there cutting hydraulic hoses or stealing batteries out of the heavy equipment or cutting the catalytic converters from under these company trucks and things like that. And, it is what it is, guys. That's why we're there. They're a lot less likely to try to tear your machinery up if you have uniformed, high visibility security on your site. Now, moving past that, there's of course the safety and emergency response. Accidents and emergency can occur on any construction site. I don't care how careful you are. I don't care how many thousands of safe man hours you've experienced. Accidents happen every day. Somebody cuts themselves, a piece of equipment goes haywire, a board or some other construction material that's being installed could easily slip out of someone's grip or out of the riggings. Someone could step sideways trying to shift their weight and cause a ladder to tip over. They could pull a man lift over onto an uneven surface and forget to drop their outriggers, and that piece of equipment tips over. Again, you now have a potentially injured individual. And we have on these construction sites, there's a lot of people that get the word, especially if you're in the trades. Other people won't understand it, but you have what's called hot work. Hot work is anywhere that a grinder, a torch, a welder, anything that throws heat, flame, or spark. A spark lands on a piece of discarded insulation or a pile of discarded rags or even someone's coat that was left hanging on a scaffold. Next thing you know, whoosh, flames. So, it happens. Or you have an electrical panel that was not quite wired correctly. One little thing got missed. Now you have a circuit that's overheated and you have a potential fire inside the walls even. It happens, folks. I don't care what people tell you. Construction is not always the safest industry. That's why they pay the trades so bloody well to travel and get these big jobs done. When it comes to our security personnel at Templar, we see to it that if they're on a construction site, they're trained in first aid, CPR, and emergency response protocols to be able to address these incidents quickly and efficiently. Whether it's, that injury on site, a fire, trespass intrusion. And believe me, when you start, when subcontractors and day laborers, when they start having friction amongst themselves and, a subcontractor gets kicked off the site or one of these day laborers from the temp services get kicked off a site, some of these guys take that really personally. And I have witnessed incidents and intervened in incidents where these types of individuals try to come back to the job site, guys, to settle whatever grievance they might have. And, again, that's where security comes in. We are that stopping point. We are that front line. Now, of course, with our first responder capabilities, we're able to give immediate assistance for workplace injuries. That doesn't mean we are there to perform major medical work. We're not there to start IVs and all that. Yes, we'll use an AED on you. Yes, we'll do everything to stop any big bleeds and to get you to a secure area. But, at the end of the day, we're there to keep you breathing until we can get you on the back of an ambulance and hand it over to the medics. Then, of course, when we're working back and forth through dispatch, talking to emergency services, we're going to coordinate with those emergency services. We're going to tell them, okay, come through this gate. I'll have someone meet you there. We'll escort you to the scene. We'll run traffic control for them to keep vehicles and equipment and crowds off of them so that they can work and render timely aid to these individuals. Let's say we have a gas leak or a fire or some other structural problem there that creates an emergency. One of our jobs is to facilitate with quick action to evacuate everyone if it is necessary. Then, of course, back to access control and site monitoring. Unauthorized access, again, just like I spoke on earlier, can lead to liability issues, stolen property, disruptions in the workflow on the site. And our security officers implement strict access measures. We verify the identity of workers and contractors and visitors. We patrol, whether it's through our vehicular patrols when we have an officer assigned to a vehicle on the property, or the foot patrols if they're walking inside and out buildings and the surrounding grounds and parking areas. And of course, we monitor the CCTV systems if we have cameras in place. We keep logs of the comings and goings on the site. And we do that to ensure that only authorized parties are entering that construction site. When it comes to controlling these entry points, just like I said, we use video surveillance for real-time oversight. We generate security reports documenting any type of incidents on the monitoring activity side. We implement ID checks and visitor logs. We restrict access to only authorized personnel. Then you've got the compliance with regulations and liability reductions. Construction projects must comply with certain safety and security regulations to avoid fines and legal complications. And our security officers, we help enforce compliance with OSHA regulations, company policies, and the things like that so that we can ensure a safe and lawful working environment. Our proactive approach absolutely minimizes liability and enhances overall site safety. Again, why else is security there? To secure and maintain safety. We're there to protect life and property, or preserve life and property. And of course, we have to adhere to all of our industry regulations. We have to ensure that our workplace safety guidelines are followed. We have to prevent violations to the best of our abilities that could lead to project shutdowns. We catch people out there acting a fool on a piece of heavy equipment. We're obligated to report that to the general foreman, the superintendent, clerk of works, whomever, or even the site safety man for that construction company if they're available. And of course, when we do things like that, we're there to reduce the workplace liabilities, by preventing unauthorized personnel from entering your restricted areas, whether it's confined space or whatnot, because they have to have permits and certain PPE, or it's a looky-loo that somehow managed to get past an access gate and does not understand that all of those signs they passed that said stop, turn around, private property, etc., did apply to them, regardless of whether or not they think that their few hundred or a couple $1,000s in annual taxes paid out supported this facility. Granted, they may have, but trust me, guys, $1,000, $2,000, that's a drop in a bucket for most construction sites. That doesn't even begin to cover it. There are construction workers who make that in less than a week based on just their trade and their skill set. Believe me, I have seen it happen more than once. I've even drawn a few of those pretty checks like that back in the good old days. When I was working private sector down in North Carolina, when money got tight or the hours were short with security contracting or the investigative contracting I have done, then I was not the least bit ashamed to jump on a shutdown somewhere and get back on my tools. But of course, then we have to discuss the fact that we do offer customized security solutions. Every construction project, guys, has unique security challenges. Here at Templar, we tailor our security services to meet those needs, whether they need an armed guard, unarmed guard, night patrols, integrated systems. We provide a strategic plan designed for the maximum protection and efficiency that we can provide. Obviously, in order to do that, we have to assess security needs. We have to evaluate the vulnerabilities on the site before we can implement these plans. And then we have to sit down and really look at everything we found, all of our notes, and lay out a solid, tailored security plan for that particular site. Once we have that, then comes the implementation of these site-specific strategies. We assign the personnel based on the risk factor on our side. We use whatever technology is necessary and at our disposal to complement human oversight. Humans miss things. That's part of the whole being human thing. We're not omnipresent as much as we would love to be, and we're far from perfect, even though I will say with just a little bit of pride that we are some of the best in the business in the area. But, then, of course, it's the cost effectiveness of the security investment. These companies, when they're hiring security services, it may seem like an added expense, but you have to weigh that against the potential costs of theft, vandalism, project delays, because the reality is a couple $1,000s a week, $8,000, $10,000, $12,000 a month for a basic one-man security detail on a construction site. Guys, that doesn't even compare to what a project delay could cost a construction company. That doesn't compare to stolen material loss or equipment being damaged or any of these, criminal acts that we are there to prevent may cause on a construction site. God forbid that someone comes onto that site and decides to find out how bad their luck really is and they end up injured. When that happens, even though they were trespassing, even though they had no business on that job site, if they get hurt, there's going to be an insurance payout most likely, and it's not going to be a small payout. We're talking 5 and 6 figures there right off the bat, depending on how bad they were injured. And God forbid someone dies on a construction site, even if they are trespassing, there can be multiple lawsuits. And the reality is even if you have signage up, guys, that stop, no trespassing, etc., folks, I'm just going to be blunt. Half of these people that are coming onto a construction site to tear things up, steal things, whatever, just like I expressed earlier with the trespasses at the Clendenin School when we were on that project, folks don't read those signs, and if they do read them, they don't care to read. Don't care what is being said. They've made up their mind they're going to access that property. Well, the thing is, when you have active physical security, boots on the ground security, prompt, well-maintained, alert officers with solid training like Templar puts out in the field, guys, you can argue it in court that, well, we had physical security. Security advised these people to stop and leave. They persisted. They tried to go further onto the site. That fall or that injury could have been avoided had they complied with the no trespassing signage, and barring that, at least complied with the instruction of our security personnel. The insurance rates and the losses are strongly mitigated at that point. People don't understand how that sometimes works, but you have to think, when we're talking about minimizing these financial losses, like I say, of course, reducing the insurance claims due to theft and damage or injury. You also have, as long as security's on the site and able to intervene before a problem becomes a incident, so to speak, or an incident becomes a problem, so to speak, however you prefer to word that, when we're able to intervene like that and stop these things before they escalate, we're able to prevent the downtime that is caused by these types of situations. Downtimes cost money. Many construction sites, just like Templar pays out what we call show-up time. If a client does not cancel their service within a set amount of time, and of course, whether it's a shift or a venue change or whatever, within our contracts even, it expresses that there is a set number of minimum billing hours per officer. Okay? Those minimum billing hours for each individual shift are how we're able to pay our personnel their show-up money. Prime example, I should say, being the security personnel assigned to the contract have already been, en route. They're 10 minutes down the road, 20 minutes down the road, and all of a sudden the client point of contact calls and says, hey, we're going to work over tonight, or we're going to throw on an extra shift, or we just don't need security for this particular day. Well, the thing is, I'm going to still bill them that minimum billing hour because that officer is close enough at that point. Some of my guys, even now, drive anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours each way just to go to work. And it's not fair to my guys to burn gas, waste energy, deprive time with their families, and lose the entirety of their wages for that shift. Those officers deserve some show-up pay, and Templar's going to make sure they're given that show-up pay. And we're going to invoice the client for it. It just has to happen that way, guys. I'm sorry. But, then, of course, you have the operational efficiencies, and our helping to increase those, because with us stopping these incidents, with us helping catch the OSHA violations, with us helping make sure that all the materials don't wander off, it helps keep the construction schedule on track. And we're able to reduce some of the distractions and safety concerns for these workers, whether it be the general contractor, whether it be the subcontractors on the site. We want to make sure that we're helping them address the safety problems that they find and report to us, or that we find during our rounds, so that they don't have to focus added energy on that, which might detract from the quality of the work that they are able to produce in a timely manner. Folks ask us, why in the world would they want to choose Templar Strategic Solutions? Well, being a trusted private investigation and security firm based here in Roane County, we are committed to providing top quality security service, that is tailored to each individual need of these construction clients, regardless of the size of the project. Our teams are experienced, licensed security professionals that ensure your project is going to remain safe, secure, and uninterrupted. Obviously, there are times when even we are not good enough to stop some things. Blizzards happen, storms fronts come through. You might encounter an entire week where it pours the rain, and depending on the stage of your construction project, obviously, guys, if you're still trying to get foundations poured and footers dug, or trying to get a primary slab down, or you're trying to hang the steel before you get this building dried in, we cannot walk out there and pick a fight with old Mother Nature and say, hey, you knock that off. My guys need to go to work. All we can do is keep security in place and help you guys out with that. And by help you out, I mean make sure that your site stays secure while you're not able to work, so that when you come back to work, your materials, your equipment, your job site are all still right where you left them, in the shape you left them, so you can get right back to production. And just to close this out, guys, and to summarize some of this for you, let's just be real. Construction sites, they're going to face numerous security challenges: theft, vandalism, safety concerns, regulatory compliance, and hiring the professional officers through Templar, that provides you with a proactive approach to protecting these assets, to ensuring worker safety, and to maintaining smooth operations. Additionally, and this is not always the case, but it does occur from time to time, some even general clients, whether it's construction or not, might be able to enjoy discounts in some of their insurance premiums by having physical boots on the ground security solutions in place. And there's no reason for a commercial construction site to leave, or construction firm or contracting firm, there's no reason for them to leave their sites vulnerable to these risks. It's not that hard to partner with Templar Strategic Solutions for reliable and professional security solutions that safeguard those investments. And, folks that are more interested in what we might be able to provide, they can always call our office line from 9:30 to 5:30 p.m. Monday to Friday at 304-591-9787, they can always visit our website at TemplarStrategicSolutions.com. And we're always happy to discuss what solutions we may have available to resolve any concerns they might have. Now, guys, we are actually a little bit over our normal 45-minute gap. We're running somewhere close to 55 minutes right now, 56 minutes. Thank you for tuning into the podcast this evening. Look forward to putting out another episode for you next week. Obviously, send me an email at info@TemplarStrategicSolutions.com. Put your subject matter podcast if you would like to put some questions out there, or you'd like us to do a piece on any type of specific topic relating to private investigations and the security world out here, and the types of services that Templar and companies like us put out there for you. Some of you always have questions, and we're happy to answer them, guys. I know I'm happy to answer these questions because I'm here to help you stay as informed as you can so that you can make solid choices when you contract with a firm like Templar Strategic Solutions or even one of our competitors. If a competitor gives you a quote and you're curious about what they're looking at and why they're giving you these numbers, guys, feel free to call me. I'll talk it over with you. You don't even have to tell me who the competitor is. You discuss with me in confidentiality those rates. I'll be happy to tell you or help you understand more about the services breakdown that they've provided, if I am able. Of course, you can always contact their sales team, but their sales team, I'm going to tell you, most times they're going to try to push you to take all these little recommendations, and those recommendations, I will not say they're good or bad because I don't know. I don't know what decisions or what operating process our competitor might offer, but I do know how Templar operates, and I do know that we are going to be the ones to step out and handle those problems for you guys. I hope all of you stay safe. I hope you have a wonderful evening. Thanks again for tuning into the podcast, guys. Stay safe.